that red light fever in the studio. And you're like, oh, and you get nervous. So, Scott, mate, how are you?
Great. How you doing?
I'm good. Sorry, I mentioned earlier, that this is a brand new room that I'm in, and it's very echoey. So I'm trying to keep this mic as close as I can to try and dull down any of the reverb.
I think it sounds like great ambient sound. It's like, makes you sound extra appealing,
Yeah. All right. So, what's going on with you at the moment?
Musically, I'm playing in a bunch of projects, including my own project. During COVID, I bought a couple resonator guitars and started composing. I started getting really into string quartet stuff like Shostakovich and Bartok and Ravel, and I started to compose in a completely different way. So what ended up coming out is this kind of new, I needed something fresh, because it's like I get very tired of how I compose, and I'm very tired of how I play quickly, and it's depressing. In order to move forward, or in order to feel like I'm progressing, or as they say, the better you get, the worse you realize you are. But it's kind of scary. It's kind of a new kind of composing and composition. So anybody that's heard me before are going to be like, what are you doing? But besides that, yeah, I play with an R&B artist named Debo Ray. Often, she's amazing musician. She's just fantastic. On a couple of tracks of her upcoming album. Nice. I've also been working with a synth pop artist named Casey Desmond, who's amazing. And I'm on her whole next album, and I don't know when it's coming out. It's kind of been wrapped up for a little while, but once in a while I go over and record something new. So I don't know if she's waiting to pick and choose what's going to go on the record, or So, and then just side musician stuff, like I said, studio work, live shows. I try to stay busy with stuff I really enjoy. So at my age, I tend to say no to stuff I'm not really interested in. Like, as you get older, you can afford to do that a little bit more.
Yeah, I think that's the kind of that's the upside of getting a bit older. You're not scrambling around doing bar gigs for 75 quid or $75 or something.
Quid, yeah.
Yeah, sorry, bucks.
I speak British too.
All right. Well, my wife's American, so I'm fluent in American too.
My wife's British.
Really? No way. All right, so let's go for where's your wife from?
Highgate.
All right, okay.
North London.
How did you meet?
She actually moved here, and I met her when she was here. So she's been here for a little while, but I guess she's actually French, and then when she was young, she moved to London.
Yeah.
And so she lived in North London most of her life.
Nice. Okay. My wife's from New York, and she moved over here to pursue a music career, and I was her guitar player for a year or two.
Is that how you met?
That's how we met, yeah.
That's a great story.
She was actually married at the time. Oh, it gets better. She was actually married at the time. And then we kind of lost touch for about maybe even 5 years.
Yeah.
And she just dropped me a message saying, shit, I'm sorry I never came to any of the shows, because I'd always invite her and her husband out to shows. She never turned up, and then she just dropped me a message saying, really sorry, we never got out to any of your shows. We got divorced. Life's a bit shit. And I was like, oh, I'm heading into town tonight if you want to grab a drink. She was like, yeah, okay. And that was it.
That's a good story. That's a great one.
Yeah. So, yeah. And so you teach at Berklee as well?
I teach there part-time, yeah.
Okay. How is Berklee these days?
Berklee it's changed over time. I mean, the difference between old Berklee, if we can call it that, is back in the day, well, like 70s and 80s, let's say, or even the 90s, it wasn't an accredited school. It was a private music school. So back in the day, like big time professionals, if they were on tour and they were in Boston for a while, they go study at Berklee. They had some of the greatest, like Herb Pomeroy. They had some of the greatest people in the business teaching there. And they still have amazing faculty. Absolutely. The faculty is amazing there. I think what changed is at some point the school became accredited. And in the States, that kind of means there's a standard of which you have to do things for it to be an accredited. So it used to be called Berklee School of Music. Now it's called Berklee College of Music. And the accreditation basically means you have a well-rounded education. So instead of it being focused on just music, you have to take electives like well, art history I think is important, but
Hmm.
English classes and all this kind of other things that you would normally take at a state university
Yeah.
in the States. So
Okay.
I will say, like, I've been there for years, and I will say that I have noticed a difference in what students find important now that I'm with a generation that's only known free music, only known TikTok
Yeah.
since they were young, as opposed to years ago when it was either in its infancy and the students didn't kind of have it. They didn't have any of that stuff. They didn't grow up with it, and music wasn't really free yet or anything. So it's kind of an interesting thing to watch. I mean, there's some great students. Don't get me wrong, but
Yeah.
there's some. It's kind of like they have this thing that they don't go see shows. They kind
Mm.
of hang out and wait on Instagram or something, which is exactly what not to do if you have a resource like Berklee.
Yeah.
It's like anything in life. It's what you make it. you
Mm.
know so people could go there and complain, or they can go there, they got amazing faculty, amazing resources, and never mind the amazing networking that happens. I mean, most
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
get gigs out of people move to Nashville, California, whatever, and then they end up kind of collaborating and touring and doing stuff after the fact. So yeah, it's kind of I always say to students, if they start complaining, I'm like, hey, it's like life. It's what you make it. And
Yeah. Yeah.
if
Yeah.
you're not getting anything out of it, you're not getting anything out of it. It's not
Mm.
for everyone, I would say, but yeah, that's kind of in a nutshell. That's kind of the
Yeah.
difference.
So yeah, when I was studying, I studied at a school just outside of London, and they had a partnership program. I'm pretty sure it was Berkeley, and they said during the, I think it was a spring break, they said you can go and study at Berkeley for 2 weeks. I was like,
Cool.
okay, and I'd never heard of it. I was like, well, what's Berkeley? And all the teachers went, Berkeley is, and then they just listed off the faculty, like the old students, and they said this is the place that people go to. They'll whip your ass into shape. I mean, the school that I was in did a good job, but this was it was seen as like the one of the greatest music schools in the world. Um, and I was like, oh, I could go check that out. But it was, I can't remember, it was something ridiculous. This was 20 years ago, and it was £3,500 for 2.5
My
weeks.
gosh.
I was like, nah, I'll leave it. But I know a couple of people that went, and they were like, yeah, no, it was really good. We did it was a whole summer school, or spring school that we did. We did like makeshift sessions. They put a band together. We did a concert, and we got to
Wow. Yeah.
hang out in Boston for 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah. I mean, the cool thing that I like about Berkeley, like, I'm not teacher certified.
Mm.
They don't hire people that, well, maybe now because it's accredited. When I got hired, I have my bachelor's in composition and performance from a small state school, but really by touring and playing and learning from other players and learning from records, that's really the the bulk of how I learned to play. And when I got hired there, I was like, I was terrified because I didn't go there, and I thought, well, I'm going to be worse than the students, because I had this thing about Berkeley, like, and it turns out, I said, the guy hiring me, I'm like, I don't want to undersell myself, but what am I supposed to teach? I don't know the Berkeley method. He goes, there's no Berkeley method.
Mm.
You are there to teach what you do. You're sharing your experience. If a student isn't into what you're doing, they're going to sign up with someone else.
Mm.
So you've got faculty there that are professionals, that are like in the field actually doing stuff, rather than they just have where I went to school. There was some great classes, in I don't think any of the people that were in the faculty ever gigged. They had their master's degree or their doctorate, and they never had a gig. And it was a little underwhelming, even though the information was kind of cool. It's like you couldn't ask for advice from my ear training teacher about,
How do you
you
set
know,
up your pedal board?
or, when you're on a gig, how do I use this stuff? Or,
Yeah.
it's kind of, so I think that was a difference I noticed from, and I liked, I went to a state school called UMass Dartmouth, and I thought it was awesome. It was a great school. I had a great experience, but really most of mine I was just very ambitious. I went to shows a lot. I said yes to every gig I could. I transcribed albums. And so, I and I still am pretty ambitious. Like I practice as much as I can, you know. But yeah, it's definitely it's cool in the sense that my peers that teach there, there's so much to learn from them. I can just stop in the hallway and ask them advice on something, and vice versa. So
Yeah.
fun.
Well, I mean, I think I think that's the way certainly music school should be. I mean, when I was at college, all the teachers were players. They were doing West End shows. They had West End chairs. They were touring. You'd have one teacher one week, and they'd have to sub them out because they're on tour. But that's what I wanted. I want players that are on touring. They're gigging and they're doing studio work. They're
Yes.
pro players. I didn't want a 65-year-old guy who just, well, I don't know what you call it, phones in a paycheck every month.
Well, exactly.
So,
And for one of the teachers I had, I remember this older guy. He must have been in his 70s, and I just remember like every class he'd sit in his chair and kind of mumble like the same class he's been mumbling for 40 years, you know. And it was like who can make talking about Bach boring? Him,
yeah.
you know. So he wasn't like emotionally invested in it, which that's something I think maybe most of us would respond to. Somebody that's like really emotionally invested in the music as much as maybe you feel you are, because
Yeah.
that's why you're at the school. That's why, I mean, some of us get the bug where all you can think about is guitar. You don't want to be at school. You want to be, you want to be anywhere. You want to be at a party. You want to be home figuring stuff out and trying to get a sound and all that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree, man. It's totally. So you said you practice a lot.
I try to. Yeah. I mean,
What does
yeah.
your practice look like?
Wow. Well, if I'm not if I'm not learning songs for a set, that's different. My personal practice, I'm back to kind of working on just any tune, and like I'm really going back to the beginning and just kind of like playing the melody in a way that it sounds just as good as I could get it. I'm careful to where every note lands, the tone of every note I'm playing, and then I kind of build off of that. My big focus right now is I like playing trio. You know, whatever genre it is, rock, funk, jazz, all fusion, whatever you want to call it. But I'm really interested in how a lot of guitar players handle a trio situation. And I started to really start to appreciate some different people. And, I listened. And what I do is I might do it with some standards just because I'll write kind of an etude where I've got some parts moving. I've got the melody very clear. So I'm trying to make it so when I play in a trio, it's just bass, drums, and guitar, that the guitar is like filling up the space almost like a piano would, maybe a couple parts going on at once. There's a big difference, I always say, between imitation and influence. I don't want to imitate anyone, but I can get ideas from people like Ed Bickert, for example. I listen to him and I'm like, my God, that's such a wonderful, or even Yvette Young. She plays rock trio and she's figured out this interesting way with effects and kind of tapping and stuff to fill up the spectrum. I think she's very clever.
Okay.
And so I just learned to appreciate these different people. And I'm always interested in looking for my sound. And I don't know if I found it. People say, yeah, you definitely have a sound. You definitely have this. But I don't know how you feel. But like, I don't know. Maybe it's because I'm the only one that hears myself practice all the time. And you're the only one that would ever hear yourself play guitar every time you picked up the instrument. And so I'm actually kind of backed off. I do run etudes and Bach violence pieces or a transcription for technique or rhythmic things to break up my rhythm, but I'm basically trying to come up with pitch organization and sound. And then I actually started taking a few classical guitar lessons now.
Interesting.
Yeah, but not classical in the sense of like I'm a lefty, so my picking hand is still hybrid picking, but the classical teacher is helping me on the fretboard. Like, how do you make this one sustain so long, and then you have this stuff move in this one piece?
Yeah.
And my mind's getting blown at like the stuff that's being showed to me that I just had maybe bad habits, but stuff that's starting to fix and allow me to play more parts at once. I'll go and I'm somebody that will go up to someone and go, hey, can we sit down and play? Or if somebody has something I want to kind of check out a little bit, like classical, I'm like listening to these pieces going, that sounds like a piano. How do those chords go into each other so smooth? How do you practice that? And that's kind of what I've been after. So I definitely get help from other professionals that maybe have a different kind of, what do you call, they have a different specialty than I do.
Yeah, different toolbox.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that's great. I mean, I still have sort of almost regular lessons every couple of weeks, and I just I can't think of another way that gets you to where you want to be quicker than just sitting down with someone that can do it and just say, look, my fucking economy picking sucks. He goes, right, well, here's a couple of exercises. That's what I did. I sat down and I'd never given economy picking a fair crack. I was like, I can alternate pick quite well. I'm quite happy with that. My legato's fine. Why the
Yeah.
fuck do I need economy? And he went, no, well, let's have a look at it. So I just spent like 2 weeks, like painfully slow, going up and down these scales. And then after about a month, I'm like, fuck, this is like my right hand is like moving through the strings like a knife through butter. And then when I go to
amazing.
When I go to alternate picking, that's then improved.
Yes.
Because I don't know why or how, but I'm obviously addressing certain aspects in my alternate picking by looking at economy picking.
I love that because
so fucking like everything is just intertwined and connected.
Yeah, I mean, I was doing about a year ago, as Bill Evans is one of my favorite musicians, the pianist, and I was doing one of his solos, and there's these like kind of triplet on guitar, they'd be like these weird triplet sweeps, but it's piano. And I was like, I'm gonna botch over that. Then I'm like, wait a minute. I'm gonna do this super slow and it's gonna be awkward. And then it took me months. But then I started to like my pick started to float on just those 3-note things until they sounded even and full. And then I noticed when I was improvising, I would see some kind of note cluster or shape, and then I'd be able to kind of phrase my way, dragging the pick up. So it's like sometimes techniques, when you discover a technique, in my case, I was trying to get a sound that I didn't have the technical ability to get. And so I really kind of worked on that. And I mean, it wasn't a big mystery how to work on it, but it drew it to my attention. And I was like, I'm no good at this. And I would like to have this in my toolbox. I would like to have this where I can make this kind of phrase happen, rhythmically or other, or sound or whatever. So yeah, the economy picking thing, that's great. It's like, it's a whole different way. I know people that, I mean, I'm mostly an alternate picker, but I have students that are economy pickers, and man, it's just suits them so well. It's just, and it sounds different, right?
Yeah. It's alternate picking with a little bit of sweeping going on.
Exactly.
And it's just, you finally realize how Eric Johnson gets those lines to sound like Eric Johnson.
He's just, he's, talk about unique. What a unique voice in every sense.
Yeah, I mean, tone, phrasing, note choice, it's just
all of it. Yeah, and his sound.
I tell you what, I was talking to somebody. It's like listening to a singer on guitar.
Yeah.
And like just those wide intervallic jumps that you don't expect. You're like, fucking, what was that?
I know. Yeah,
and his chord voicing as well. His chord voicing's just, it's insane.
Yeah. And I remember I saw him live once for the first time, the Via Musicum tour. I was younger, but I remember going, those weren't overdubs. He's switching from Fenders to Marshalls and fitting in these two chords and then switching back to these clean chords and singing. And then I just thought I just saw the most ridiculous, I couldn't believe it. What I was hearing and seeing, going, oh, I thought those were all punches. I thought it would be totally different live, but he was able to do it all and be kind of spur of the moment. Cause I don't know if you've ever seen him live, but he will go off.
Yeah.
And, so he'll take an improv and go somewhere, and you're in for a ride.
But that's, that's just the way that he plays. I mean, it's just so musical, and so, it's almost so un-guitarist.
Yeah. At the beginning, I thought he sounded like more like a violin when I first heard him. And yeah, you're right. Yeah, yeah. The phrasing is just so unique. And how do you do that? I mean,
Mm,
he one time he said he was. They made fun of people made fun of him because he was a Clapton clone when he was young.
mm,
I'm like, wow. Like I could hear a little Clapton in there, a little Hendrix, but those are like near. You could tell he listened to it and he made it
yeah.
his own somehow. And that's the ultimate goal, I think, for me is to have my own voice because nobody can be a better me than me.
Well, yeah. You mean you alluded to that earlier by saying you're always trying to search for what was it you said? Influence, not
Yeah, not imitation.
imitation. That was it. Yeah.
So if
I
like you
mean,
see somebody do something, it's like, wow, that was like that's interesting. How it I really liked how that sounded. How would I work that out? And then it turns into something else. So
yeah,
I was influenced by or inspired maybe
yeah,
by an idea. But yeah, when I was younger, I used to imitate like in my 20s because well, if I copied Robin Ford, like his licks and everything, I would be a success because he's time tested. He already invented something great. And after a while, it's like there was no me in there. It was just like I was copying, you know, and I was working a lot, but I wasn't creating much. And so one day I said, "My God, I gotta stop doing this. I gotta stop doing that." And then I started to become aware of like composing and then working on stuff slowly. Now I'm at a much higher level, but it's much more chill. It's kind of like I'll practice for hours, but I'll sit with one idea and take my time with it now instead of like back in the day, gotta move the metronome up, gotta
mm,
learn these licks, gotta do this, gotta be able to play this tempo. It's not so much that now, it's exploring something,
yeah.
a melody, for example, exploring notes played at the same time, any of that.
Mm. I'm gonna say something. I like. You don't have kids, do you?
Stepkids.
You have stepkids. They live
Yeah.
with you.
No.
Okay. Yeah, because I don't get the time to sit and do 4 hours practice.
How old? How old are your kids?
12 and 13.
Okay, yeah. I
So I
mean,
mean, they're getting to the stage. Like I had a student come over today, and I just left them in the house, and they just watched each other.
yeah.
So it's getting to that stage where I can kind of leave them for a bit. But our youngest is, she has some issues, but behavioural things. So I can't leave her for too long. But yeah, I mean, man, like in my youth, prior to having kids, you do a full 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 hours just working on stuff, going through tunes. Now I'm going to
God,
learn
yeah.
this. I do miss it.
Yeah, I mean, in the end, I think I'd be curious to see what you thought. Like when you started playing, was there ever a point where you got to what I call like fear-based practicing? I went through this thing called fear-based practicing, meaning I really need to work on stuff because I don't want people to think I suck, or I really need to play this fast, or I really need to whatever it was. I was worried about anything but myself. I don't know if other guitarists experience that.
Recently,
Yeah.
only recently, only since TikTok and Instagram, and you're scamming through it, and you go, "Fucking these 12-year-old kids in China are killing it." Oh, fuck, I gotta go practice. But
Yeah,
yeah, before then, no, not really.
I mean the thing about the YouTubers and all that it's great, but it's completely different from what you or I do.
Hmm.
They're not gonna function in a band, most of them. They're not gonna function on a gig. Some of them can't even play rhythm or chords. Some of them have a specific niche, but they're all kind of competing against each other, like and it's like whoever has the fastest technique. And I'm not putting it down. I'm just saying that that's not my world. So
Hmm.
you could probably kind of separate that and go, that's not what you're about. You're about sitting down and like finding like this is wonderful. The thing about you going to say, I want to check out economy picking, you did that as a choice, and now you're getting different sounds, but you're not, it's kind of like, I want to check this out, and things are sounding different, feeling different, where these people have to put out content constantly, and they have to be afraid because there's always someone faster, there's always someone trickier, there's always someone, and
Yeah.
I can't be that person. I'm not insanely, I'm not like a Paul Gilbert or an Ingve, and I love those players. Don't get me wrong. I got to focus on being me because nobody can do that better
Yeah.
than I can.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
I saw a guy. who was such a big Clapton fan. Like, he bought all the gear, he had all the pedals, and he sounded more like Clapton than Clapton.
Oh my God.
It was I can't even it was like a blues gig somewhere like years ago, and we were just watching him, like we were all just sort of staring at each other like, what the fuck is this? It wasn't like a Clapton tribute or anything. It was just a blues jam, not a blues jam, but it was just they were just doing blues standards and jazz standards, and like, this guy it just sounds like fucking Clapton.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was the strangest thing.
And I've seen Stevie Ray Vaughan clones, like, you know, or I remember when Pat Metheny came out with that album Question and Answer, there was a few people in town in Boston that like practiced that album so much that if you heard them play, they sounded like Metheny. I mean, not just like Metheny, but like you could tell. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Like, I'm not against like tribute bands. You know, if somebody wants to dedicate their times to sound exactly like Jimmy Page, more power to them. I don't put it down. I just say that I'm not interested in that personally as a player. That's all.
Yeah.
You know, it's like I love listening to Yngwie albums, but I never thought that I wanted to play like that. I never tried to go, oh, I want to learn this. They're like the early albums, I should say.
Yeah, yeah. So I've never really Yngwie has been one of those players that I've just avoided.
Yeah.
But my teacher is like a diehard Yngwie fan, and he will just keep throwing me Yngwie licks. I'm like, I'm not interested.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's the same with me. You know, it's like early on when he had like Jeff Scott Soto or Jolyn Turner singing. Those were cool tunes. And I thought he had like a fire to his playing, but never once did I say, I'm going to sit down and learn that. It never interested me. It was, but then when it became, after a while, where it kind of became, he was trying to come up with something difficult, then I kind of like lost the musical interest in listening.
Yeah.
But there's players like Vi. There's all kinds of musicians that I listen to, and even non-guitarists, and go, wow, I love listening to it. I love checking out, and I'm getting something from it. You know, who knows what? But like, you know, I think you're influenced or inspired if you're listening to stuff you like.
Yeah. So, getting better. What's your take on getting better these days?
And just in general, or me?
And how has it changed over the years? Like, as a player, what was getting better? Let's go back, like when you first started. For the first 10 years, what was getting better? What was that kind of like, I've got to hit this?
I was obsessed. Okay, so when I very first started, anytime my teacher showed me a song that was on the radio, that was a win. That was just like so cool. You know, I didn't want to do the Mel Bay reading stuff, but you know, I kind of had. But you know, after I got some, you know, I was playing a lot. Then I was, you know, junior high and high school, I was very much into like Vivian Campbell, John Sykes, Iron Maiden, those, you know, Gary Moore, the 80s Gary Moore.
Yeah.
And my goal then was just to go home and lift the stuff off the albums and play them as close as I can to the album. And I did that for hours and hours and hours. I think at that point, my goal was, I'm going to do this until I get this. Right. And that was fun for me. And then, of course, when I went off to college, I got into my first band that played in clubs, an original band. And I realized that like my vocabulary didn't really fit. I tried to make it fit. Then I realized that, you know, the guys in the band were like, you know, like you got to chill out on this and you got to do this and you got to, and I was like, well, wait a minute, you know? So getting better at that point meant I had to make something sound really kind of cool in the song. Yeah. And then I got an R&B tour, which I had no business having at the beginning. And and somehow I got on it, and then I got kind of checked the first 2 nights, and then I just would stay up in my hotel room and lift the stuff right off the record and like right off the tape at the time, and just play to it until my time started to settle in. And that's where I got my kind of R&B groove funk time, was touring with bands like that. Then eventually I got it because I had a different mindset about what it's about. So that, you know, at first it was just me getting this Randy Rhoads solo or this Vivian Campbell solo or whoever. And then it became survival, right? You know, I want to keep this gig. And then once I started to get the time feeling and really enjoy the guitar parts, then I started getting into some other stuff. But back then also, like when I got out of school, I was studying hardcore and I was making a living playing guitar already. I mean, I had very low expectations of living costs, so
Mm.
I didn't have to make that much. But I was practicing hours and hours, and I was studying with a guitar player named Bruce Bartlett, and he was probably one of the greatest people I heard in Boston at the time. So everything he said, I did, and I was like 6, 8 hours a day, and then the gig at night. So I guess, yeah, I think my focus back then was this, to play jazz actually for a while. I left everything else, and so all of a sudden, because he was like this blues rock player, but he could play the hell out of jazz,
Yeah.
and it kind of all meshed in. And he was kind of the gateway into, well, you could like rock like Hendrix, but also do jazz. What the?
Mm.
And so, but then it hit a time where I'm imitating so much just because for me, I would say it was lazy because I knew if I showed up to a gig and could do all these licks that everybody loved, all these
Mm.
parts that everybody loved that were already successes in the history of music, I would be accepted. Not as a unique player, but then eventually the tough thing was facing yourself. And for me to sit down and actually go, God, who am I and how do I find that?
Mm.
And then, so practicing now, I think over the last 10 years has slowly become more and more focused on sounding like me. And that's really the goal now. That's what the improvement is. If I play something unique rhythmically, or I play something unique tone wise with my fingers, that's a success to me now.
Mm.
I'm not interested in trying to pull off this lick or that lick, although in the past I was.
Yeah.
But it's just, I think you made the point about, TikTok and stuff. I just think it's right now for me to try to do that is ridiculous because these people can't even keep up with each other, you know. How am I going to? And but they don't have to make their living performing
Mm.
like with other artists. That's a different art set, that's a different skill set.
Yeah.
Having good ears, being able to read, that could get you more work. That's a skill to have. But if you have really good ears and good time feel and you're well listened, you work. And I think that's more what I do rather than coming up with the fast trick and going, we call it the shock and awe, right? And
Mm.
it is amazing. It's like, people, I don't know about you, but people send me Instagram stuff of like a 10-year-old doing something ridiculous. Like if it's going around, I get it. Like,
Yeah.
they send it to me, like 10 people send it to me. I don't even respond. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, I get it.
Yeah. Yeah. But I heard who was I speaking to? I think it was Carl Verheyen. I think he came on a couple of months ago, and he said we had one of those Instagram TikTok guitar players come down for Nam. Guy couldn't fucking play. He's like, he put his track on, he just couldn't fucking string a shit together, and we were all just like, wow, what a fucking crock of shit! What the hell's going on?
Yep.
I don't know. I mean, you said it. They're doing it for a different reason. They're playing for a different reason. It's not playing music. It's content. It's clicks. It's
It's,
likes.
it's content. Yeah. That's a good way of putting it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's kind.
Yeah, you wouldn't think of like if you wrote a song and you really like close to that song, you wouldn't think of that as content really. You wouldn't throw like, the content has to be short, the attention
Mm,
span, they have all these rules which I don't pay attention to because I'm not in that game, you
yeah.
know. It's nothing wrong with the game. I'm just not in it. It's
Mm,
like I'm not part of a lot of things. But, that's definitely, one of it's kind of like the singer's version of, well, don't you want to be on American Idol? And a lot of singers like,
yes. Yeah. Yeah.
no, or The Voice or whatever.
Mm,
No, I'm not into that. But there's nothing wrong with it. But that's not. I value other things, and I've
yeah.
heard that like somebody was telling me that when they were in Italy, one of the famous YouTubers came out to sit in with the band,
Mm,
and the YouTuber did their shred routine over whatever key they were in. And then the guitarist I was talking to said the dude didn't know any chords and couldn't play rhythm. I even asked him, could you back me up with a little rhythm?
mm,
No. And it's like, wow, you can't play a simple rhythm or anything or function in a live setting, even to sit in on a tune, which I'm sure, I don't know what tune it was, but it's probably something like a blues or a one chord vamp or a.
Yeah.
So I mean that's where it's like they don't really belong in the material. Well, I don't want to say belong. They don't really. Their strength isn't in the material world, and their strength is making content, which I'd be no good at. Yeah. You know, if I tried to, I do put transcriptions and stuff on my page every once in a while, but it's just kind of like, hey, this is what I'm checking out right now. I don't have that many followers. I don't care.
Yeah.
I mean, I do like connecting with people and hearing their music, but it's not like a lot of people are like, oh, I just got to figure out that algorithm. I just got to get, so many followers so I mean something.
Yeah.
I guess maybe because you and I remember a time when there was none of this. It's not as important. It's not as important. It's not as important at all to me.
No. I mean, I tried the YouTube thing when COVID hit because I had nothing else going on. So
sure.
I was like, all right, I've got the channel. I tried it 15 years ago. I was like, all right, I'll do content. I've got nothing else going on. So yeah, I did it for 18 months. Like it moved this much. I was like, fuck it. As soon as gigs came back, I was like, fuck it. I'll just throw any old shit up now. Every now and again, I'll throw something up. I mean, it's kind of the same with Instagram. I just don't. But like people, like my sisters or my brothers, or they'll say like, you should do this every week. You should do this, and you should sync it up with the TikTok. You should do. And I was like, I just don't fucking want to. If I get something that's good, I'll be like, all right, I'll throw that up. That looks pretty cool. If I get a really good show, it's like, all right, I'll do something with that. I'm not fucking doing it every week.
Well, the other thing too is, tell me if you notice this, like when I get quote advice for it, it's always, well, you should add a singer in your band and you should do some cover songs that people know. And then you should. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. Now I'm trying to cater. What you're telling me is to try to cater an audience that's not there, but try to adapt to the common person.
Yeah.
Rather than do what I think is right. And those people will show up, even if there's 10 of them. But like, yeah, like, of course you and I know, we would do covers of famous songs and but and people often kind of think like, well, if you do cover songs, then they'll come in and check your original songs. Do you remember back in the day when we used to gig and it would be a cover gig and there would always be somebody in the band that would say, if we start throwing in our original songs here and there, they're going to really like it. No, they're not. You're in a bar. They want to hear, they want to get drunk about it. They're going to leave.
They're going to leave. They're going to throw shitters. Yeah. Yeah. We tried that and it never works. So I did a dep gig, or what you call a sub gig for somebody. And
yeah.
So what you said about doing trio gigs, I started doing trio gigs just over a year ago, last summer. I used to hate it. I used to hate doing trio gigs because I always wanted another guitarist or a keyboard or even a backing track just to back me up.
Right.
And I was like, no, I'll give it a go with that. And now I fucking hate having another instrument. It's like, I just want drums and bass. That's all I want because we've got so much freedom. We can all just kind of do what we want. And so long as we come back in on the one, we're good. So I depped in for a friend of mine and he pulled out his set list. I was like, that's the same set list that I do with my band. It's the same, like it was just a function covers gig.
Yeah.
It's the same fucking songs. You just done them in a different order. I was like, and I remember messaging people saying like, any other tunes that you guys do that go down well? And they're like, they send over their list of songs. These are the ones that go down well. It's the same fucking songs.
Well, yeah, for those gigs, it's like, that's why I can sub for any like wedding or corporate band. Because everybody wants to hear the same 60 tunes. When they're at a wedding, all of a sudden they're huge Neil Diamond fans. Yep. Or they're huge, they want to hear the B-52s and they want to hear the specific songs, not any B-52s. They want to hear Love Shack,
Yeah. You can't throw out any deep cuts from B-52s at all.
No, I don't even think.
Are there any?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They had a lot of albums.
I don't know. That's the only song I know.
Well, what about Rock Lobster?
Nope.
You probably heard it.
Maybe. I probably recognize it from a Family Guy skit.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. That's right. He had his guitar and he did rock.
The rock pissed on the floor.
That's right. Oh my God, that was when he pulled out the acoustic guitar. I forgot about that. Good one.
Yeah. Oh man, I hadn't thought about that in ages. That was a fucking that was one of those shows that the first 3 seasons were just gold dust, and then just went off a fucking cliff. Like
I mean,
four was just about watchable, and then 5 was like, oh, this is dreadful.
well, God, when do you run out of those jokes? You know,
Yeah.
I mean, it's like The
Callback
Simpsons were
jokes.
on for decades.
That was like classic Simpsons. They went for 10 years. It was consistently good,
Yes.
and then we just petered off a bit.
Yeah. I mean, how long can you use the characters in those contexts?
Yeah.
It has
But
to
yeah,
get out.
that was so fucking good. The class. I was just thinking of that the other day when he gains like 80 pounds, so he has to work at home. Do you remember that one? Do you remember
No.
that one? So Homer has to. Sorry, we've gone off topic, but Homer has. He has this great idea because the company he works for has you can work from home if you're over a certain weight, and so he gains like 80 pounds.
Oh my God. No, I missed that one.
That was just so fucking good. And he steals an ice cream truck.
That sounds like Homer.
Yeah, if you've not seen that, I'm just laughing to myself. But yeah, it's fucking great. You mentioned reading.
Yeah.
I just started doing reading gigs, and I fucking love doing them.
Mm.
So I assume you can read?
Good. Yeah. I'm not like a classical guitarist reader, or a classical violinist. I've seen them sight read ridiculous stuff, but no, I'm a good reader. Yeah.
Okay. So what was the kind of, because I mean, I think guitar players are just notoriously bad readers. So is that something you worked on from early on? Did you sort of pick it up midway through?
See, at the beginning, I was taught to read, like I said, the Mill Bay, but I don't know. I never really practiced sight reading. And so even like in my teas, if you gave me something ahead of time, I could read it and figure it out, but never something on the spot. And one day I decided, because I was in some like scary situations, that I was going to start working on my reading, but sight reading. And it was a different, instead of just like figuring the stuff out and doing it until you have it, there's different techniques you could do to practice your sight reading. And it started getting better and better. And it's kind of a funny story. I started to feel like that my reading went up a level. I was like, okay, wow. And then I really enjoyed it because I could open a tune and read through it and go, wow, this is a beautiful melody. Whereas like I wouldn't have done that otherwise.
Yeah.
But then I was at Berklee and I was at the copy machine, and another faculty member said, how's your reading? I said, my reading's cool. He's like, okay, I need you to take over for me for this show. And it's in the Berklee Performance Center. So I'm like, all right. He's like, rehearsals at 7, get there at 6, just take a look at the music. Cool. I get there at 6 and I see a whole orchestra set up. There's no members there, but it's just like, and I walk in and I'm the only one there, and I sit down and there's this book and it's 3 suites and it's just dots everywhere. And I'm like, so I'm marking it up. Now here's the scary part. 2 people walk by. I look up, Steve Gadd and Abe Laboriel Sr. sit next to me. And I'm like, now I'm like, oh my God. So I'm kind of reading through this stuff and then we start playing, and I'm terrified because he didn't say Steve Gadd's going to be there. Yeah. I ended up doing okay, but then, the Lick to Spain was there, which I kind of sort of know. And I tried to fish through it by ear. And, oh, by the way, this was an open rehearsal, which means that anybody could show up and watch the rehearsal, this rehearsal. It was packed with students and other people and faculty. And I kind of botched the Spain lick, right? But so the conductor stops and says, is the guitarist going to have that for the show? And I was like, absolutely. And I'm like, I'm like dying inside.
Yeah.
And then he kind of saves me. He points to Steve Gadd. He goes, yeah, I think he messed up and he was on the album, So I was like, all right. But it was, I would say, playing with the most memorable players was because I could read. That was a struggle. I feel like I got lucky that adrenaline, like I could have sabotaged myself, but lucky I got there a little early and marked up some stuff. And then, some of the stuff I just let go because it was just like wall of dots, but I kept my place. But then that inspired me to work on it a little more. I like to like just I'll open stuff and put the metronome on and read it and see, you know, see kind of where I am. I mean, there's so much more to do with reading. I mean, I can get much better, and I just want to get like a little better over time because it's a good skill to have. I mean, you nobody has to read. It depends on what you want to do. You
Yeah,
know,
absolutely. I mean,
yeah. So if somebody says they don't read, it's like that's cool. Yeah, you know, it's like you know, I read my reasons for reading, and you know that's maybe not part of your scheme. You just want to. I'm cool with when people want to play 3-chord punk. I love it.
mm,
Just go play, man. Go play.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I didn't start reading properly until 2 years ago.
Well, that's really impressive.
So it was. I just always like I had to learn to read when I went to college, and I did the absolute bare minimum. And
Me too.
yeah, I was like, oh, but I never saw the appeal, and it never interested me, so I was never going to do it. And I took a reading gig 15 years ago, and I did a musical. I did
Yes.
Fame. I did Fame, like a high school music production. And so I was like, oh, this is okay. And then I just never bothered with it again. And then turning up to a show, doing a gig, finishing at 10 and going home really appealed to me. So I was like, I'm going to work on my reading and I'm going to do more reading gigs. And then I just started picking up just local Amdram theatre shows. And I love the fact you just set your gear up on Friday. You do your rehearsal Saturday, Sunday, show Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, bang, pack up, go home. And you're
Isn't
home
it
by
great?
11. It's like, I could get used to this. I don't want to be driving to fucking Scotland and back, rolling in at 4 in the morning anymore. I'm kind of done with that shit now.
Yeah. Now, how I got a question for you. How are you with I always got nervous with conductors early
Yeah,
on. They scared me,
yeah.
you know,
I,
because they're like eyeballing you, and then like I remember the first one's like, is that the down? You can't say, is that the downbeat or is that the downbeat, right? And I'm like, when it's just guitar, that would freak me out because they'd be conducting, but their hands are kind of flailing, and it's like, where's the time? Do I just stay here? And like, you got people on stage that it's supposed to be time with, so that took a little getting used to.
yeah, everyone that I've worked with. I mean, I haven't done a show that just has a conductor. It's an MD on keys, and
Cool,
he'll be there, like he'll conduct time, and he'll pull out beats and buttons and stops and pushes and all that kind of shit.
gotcha.
But everybody does it differently so far. I've done like 6 shows this year with 6 different MDs, and they all do it differently. The first guy had a talkback mic, so he'd say, "Right, okay, guys, the third bar's coming in, 5, 6, 7, 8, and in." I'm like, "This is fucking easy."
Yeah,
The next one didn't say a fucking word, and she was out of eye shot. So I'm playing, having to look like, where's the fucking one? There
yeah,
it is.
exactly.
Didn't do it, and then the next guy did a mixture of both. Sometimes he'd be like, "Okay, guys, here we go, third shot, and 5, and we're in, and 4, and we're going," and then that would shut up for the rest of the tune. I'm like, okay, that's just, and then the next guy did something different, and do you know what? It's just like doing a gig. It's like this drummer plays it like this drummer does it differently, but the same. How? Okay, I just got to figure it out, and that's it. You just kind of figure it out.
Yeah, yeah,
But yeah,
exactly. And the
that
more
was
you
one of the
do it,
that was one of the things I didn't think I would have to learn about until I'm sat there and they're doing this with their hands. I'm like, what is that? Okay, so that's the one. Okay, so long as but then when they do it in 6/8, I'm like,
I know. And I've done it with like string players who they just seem to zombie through it perfectly. They don't even look at the music ahead of time.
yeah,
And I'm like, yeah, I remember doing this gig once. I did a short run with one of Simon Cowell's bands, Il Divo,
yeah,
and they hired an orchestra, and I was playing nylon string in it. And I got the music ahead of time. We all did. But then driving up, the violinist, I was like, "Oh, did you notice a couple of those were in like the wrong key or a different key than the recording?" I didn't listen to it. What do you mean you didn't listen to it? We're about to do a show. Like we're doing a run of shows starting tonight, and she went and smoked it. Like didn't
yeah,
even break a sweat, and it was like a lot of violin notes. And I got in the car, and I did fine, but I had the stuff ahead of time, and my reading's okay. And we got in the car, and I was like kind of quiet. I was kind of mad, right?
Mm.
And she turns to me. She goes, "Well, if it's any consolation, I can't play Happy Birthday without the notes." And I was like, "Aha!"
Gotcha. Gotcha.
So in other words, she has to, anything she plays has to be written down. And
I
so
mean,
I'm like, "Oh,
I guess that's the trade-off. If you're, I mean, 'cause I've spoken to people who's, I think it was Jim actually, who said that his wife is an insane reader, but can't fucking improvise.
yeah,
And I was like, okay, but that's completely alien to me. But the fact that you could just open the page, there's the dots, go, done.
I don't
I'm
get
like,
it."
wow, that's amazing. But
You
how
always,
can you not? Yeah, how can you not improvise over a minor one chord? That's easy. We can all do that.
you've ever heard of the guitarist that plays with Jean-Luc Ponty? His name's Jamie Glazier. He's probably one of the greatest readers ever. And I got to know him over time. The story is he was at Berklee in the 70s, and he was such a killer reader at 18. Everybody fought to get him in their ensemble. And he actually ended up doing the Boston Symphony Orchestra, performing with them. And I looked on his website, and he's like, he has some different things. I should get one, actually. He has some different like videos you could download that help you with your sight reading. But like to see the stuff that he like actually sight reads, like he used to do like Instagram lives. He was in the Chick Corea Electric Band right after Scott Henderson,
Okay.
and he was like sight reading some of those lines that he was doubling with Chick Corea. I was like, there's no way you could double those on guitar. Like, sight read that on guitar. He goes, "No, I did. I was reading it off the floor." It's not possible, man. I've never heard of a guitar player that could read like that.
Yeah. Sorry, what was his name?
Amy Glazier, super sweetheart of a guy, such the nicest guy. What a great guitar player. And I just don't know how he does it. Like I'll email him once in a while and go, "Hey man, I think my reading just went up a notch." And I was like, I wanted to take lessons from him, but he was usually out with Jean-Luc Ponty. So I was like, "Yeah, I mean, give me a few lessons. Like, let's talk about like sight reading more. Like, I want to get better at this."
Yeah.
So maybe I'll hit him up again.
I'll check him out, man. That's cool. I mean, another question I was going to ask you is, as you're in Boston, have you bumped into Benjamin Zander?
No, I
Do you know
haven't.
who he is?
The conductor?
Yeah.
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 No, I haven't.
Have you watched his TED talk on classical music?
Oh, I didn't know he had one.
Oh, it's fucking amazing.
When did he do it?
10 years ago, 15 years ago? I mean,
I'll look it up.
he's getting on a bit,
Yep.
but I think is he still conducting?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I know it is. I've never bumped into him, although I did crash backstage with Charles Dutoit, you know him, the conductor, he's legendary, but he conducted at the Boston Symphony Orchestra. He did the French Impressionists. And I broke it backstage, and nobody really cared. Like, I was like, if it was a rock concert, I would have been thrown in a cop car. But I got to meet him, but I haven't met Ben at all. I haven't bumped into him. I've seen him,
Okay.
but I'll have to look that up then.
It's an amazing video. It's I mean, I won't spoil it for you, but the whole point of it is everybody loves classical music, but we just don't know it.
Yeah.
And he just starts playing like a fantastic pianist, and he's just walks people through a Chopin piece. Like, here's the first note, it's a B. The next note is a C. Da, da, da. The point of the C is to make the B sound sad. And then he starts playing it, and he just starts playing this little piece, and then I won't spoil it. Just it's amazing.
So he does some light analysis.
Yeah, he'll walk you through the piece, and like and I think what's the he goes, so the melody comes down da 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 and hits this chord, but it's the wrong chord. It should be this chord, but it's not. I call it an imperfect cadence. And when we do an imperfect cadence, we have to raise our eyebrows, and he gets a big laugh out of it. And then the melody does again, da 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 da, and then it literally just walks you through this Chopin piece, and then plays it at the end, and it's just so moving.
So what I noticed about when I go to London, what's amazing is what is it called, the Night of the Proms at Royal Albert Hall.
Yeah.
So I got to see the London Symphony. But here's the thing: whatever piece they're going to play, I forgot what I was watching. I don't know if it's Sky TV or whatever. they do. Somebody gets together with the symphony and they analyze the tune they're going to perform, but in layman's terms.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, okay, notice this. This is based off of this, and I'm like, we don't do that in the States. Like, this is amazing. First of all, it was 25 pounds to see it, which is, I mean, it's about $150 to see the Boston Symphony, so I could afford it. And then you get all this education with it, and I'm like, I could get used to this, But like, you seem to have that in England more than we do.
Yeah, I mean, it's not inexpensive to go to the Albert Hall or to go to see a symphony orchestras. I think we do theatre and things like that quite well over here.
Yeah. Oh my God! And the first time I walked
Very accessible.
to the Royal Albert Hall, I was overwhelmed, man. I almost cried because it's like, when I went in there, it's like, what is it? There's been music there every night since 18 something.
It's crazy.
And I'm like, oh my God, like, what's been in this room?
Yeah.
Pieces that have been premiered, and it was really pretty moving for me to go in there. And then they did some impressionist music, which is probably my favorite. Ravel and Debussy are probably my two. I mean, I like all the people that come after them, but something about the French Impressionism that's like really strikes a chord with me. No pun intended. Pun intended. But yeah,
it's cool. Yeah, I went the last time I went there. We went to see the movie Aliens, and they had a live symphony orchestra. It was just fucking amazing. So cool. Right down to, when they have the 20th Century Fox, all live. And the whole fanfare was like, holy fuck, they did that as well. It was, when they did the 20th Century Fox fanfare, I think everybody was surprised and they got a round of applause for it. It's like, we've still got 2.5 hours to go.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's really great, cool. Man. Wow. Well, I can't wait to get back out there and I've been trying to book some kind of gig there. I keep asking Jim, like, who should I hit up? So I want to go out and play, like, I don't even care if it's a pub, get like local musicians, do a trio thing out there with my music. But I got to get on that for next summer,
Yeah, man. Let us know. We'll hook up. We'll go out for a beer and a curry.
We'll go hang. Yeah. That'd be cool. That'd be awesome.
Yeah. Anyway, look, mate, I think I've kept you your hour. I really, really appreciate it. It was been
appreciate
you. So thank you.
Likewise, very much. Man. Definitely stay in touch, man. Keep me posted to your gigs.
Yeah, we'll do. Thank you.
All right, man.
All right.